Thank you all for joining us here, for me particularly. My name is Fisher. I'm a product designer. I work for a company called Applause. We focus on application quality. I'm going to talk about quality in general, quality products, quality experiences, and quality relationships between ourselves, between users, between human beings. I'm going to talk to you about my story, where I've came from, where I've been. Perhaps you'll have some valuable takeaway as I take you through this journey and apply it to your success as well. So again, I'm talking about collaboration, particularly between designers and engineers. And ultimately, it would be ideal, of course, in most situations if this was a fluid process, seamless, like these jellyfish here that I'm showing. And interesting topic, I'm just going to break off and identify, and please challenge my science, but jellyfish don't actually have brains. They have organs that operate on their own. They're autonomic. And when they are stimulated by their environment, they communicate with each other through a central nervous system. We classify this as a being. They are a group of things that interact with each other, create this team. Collaboration at its finest, of course. So I'm going to tell a story. Storytelling is extremely important when you're trying to communicate information. It's as old as language itself. We've been doing it for a very long time. And what it does is it helps convey information. It helps connect people, thoughts, ideas. It transforms thoughts from one human to another. Every good story has a backstory. It gives context. It sets the stage, as we say. Where have we been? Where will we be going? Character building is probably one of the most important variables in a good story. You need characters, you need to define them. That way the viewer or the listener can identify with these characters as they progress through the story. And the relationship between these characters, how do they interact with each other in different environments? And of course, every good story has a great climax. The end of the story where all things come together full circle. Let's introduce ourselves to character one in this story. Myself. Any resemblance, perhaps? Maybe on a Monday morning? So I'm an illustrator. I've been drawing my entire life. I've been holding lead pencils since I could hold them as a young child. I pursued a degree in college for print design, particularly multimedia. And for those of us in the audience, I'm guessing we're more familiar with creating digital experiences. Just a fun fact that when you send things to production in this world and you want to change something, it's a very expensive change. So I realized real quickly after I got out of school that I needed to turn my physical portfolio into something else. I needed to put it somewhere else where people could access it anytime, any place in the globe at their own convenience. And what better place than the internet? How ideal, yes. So I learned a few languages and I applied them to some of the teams that I worked with. And this is relevant because I'm communicating that through my experiences working with different companies, software houses, design shops, agencies, there's different ways of collaborating with each other, different methodologies, different approaches, different processes, agile, lean, waterfall, nothing, rogue, cowboy, we'll say. There's all sorts of different ways we can do things. There's no right or wrong answer, but I think the goal is to output quality product that inevitably creates success for our users. And that, of course, is why this is relevant. Now we'll introduce character number two, design. Do we have designers in the audience today? Any one of you willing to help answer a question, what is design? No brave souls? Okay, I'll try it for us. So we'll go ahead and do some research. We'll ask technically Apple Dictionary. Please tell us, what is design? Well, it is a plan or drawing produced to show the look and function or workings of something, etc. Okay, to get a little more context, we should do some more research and ask some other sources. Dear Webster, what is design? It is to plan and make decisions about something that is being built or created. So we can see a pattern here. We can sense a language that's starting to surface. And why is this relevant here, of course? Well, I think that by definition, design is process and planning. It has nothing to do with Photoshop or Illustrator or logos or colors or icons. These are simply tools, vehicles that help communicate the design. Now, how is this analogous to engineering? Engineers, developers, we'll say, in the house? Any one of us willing to to help answer this question? Okay, we're going to do the same thing for just a second. And this is character 3 in our story. What is an engineer? It's a person who designs, builds or maintains, etc. A person who has scientific training and who designs. So now we've created a relationship. We've understood that the two are analogous and essentially are conducting the same essential goals. Now, what can we design? Well, we're all familiar with coding languages, building experiences for digital interfaces that human beings can interact with to perform a task or function. But you can design everything. You can design fashion, trends, color, shapes, experiences digitally, jewelry. You can design transportation, traveling vessels, mechanisms, societies, civilization. You can carve the rock of the earth that we stand on to design living quarters. But what are we designing for? We're designing for human beings. And this is where a relationship starts, because we realize that there's someone out there consuming these things that we are, of course, designing for. Now, what creates a good relationship? What connects ourselves to the end consumer, the user, or the person consuming these designs? How can you create a relationship with someone if you can't physically be with them? You're creating an application. It goes out into the world. You're not with them, walking them through that, shaking their hand, creating a dialogue with them physically. So how do we touch their minds without being with them? The intent is to evoke a visceral reaction from the user, to engage into their subconscious, to stimulate, to capture their minds, to capture their attention by creating these experiences without having to touch them, to be with them. This creates a great relationship. Whether it's good or bad, we have one with them now, whatever the intent. Now we're going to talk about some relationships between these characters, between the human, between the designer, between the engineer. I'm going to highlight some quality products, what I have defined as quality. And we'll start here, a little dissected or separated from what we're used to considering a quality product. I'll just highlight the Bugatti. Now, first of all, we'll just examine this thing. It's unique, it's mysterious, it's intriguing. The art, there's art applied into the shapes, the smooth colors, the jet black highlights, the interesting chrome surroundings. It's like the Batmobile or a spaceship. It's creating a curiosity, and whether you like it or not, it's stimulating an emotional effect, an impact on your mind. Now, let's take a step inside this vehicle. Hand-stitched black Italian leathers, customized interfaces, chrome interior with hand-stitched fabric seats. We can customize this thing. This is another reason we're obviously paying so much for this device here. These are fine materials, handcrafted for an experience that a human will be engaged in. The bucket seats. As you sit in this vehicle, you are being hugged, cradled by the engineer, the designer who created this device, as if you were in the womb of your mother. Perhaps creating this visceral reaction that you are safe, you are connected, you have trusting this vehicle. Now, of course, the engineering behind all this. The reason this thing costs as much as it does, 250 miles per hour, perhaps 400 kilometers an hour, to be precise, or not exact, of course. This thing goes fast. It's quality, it's luxury, it's performance, it's safe, it's intimidating, it's unique. It's a beautiful collaborative experience between a design, an engineer, and a human being. Now I'll go right into Uber. A little far removed from the vehicles, of course, but slightly connected. And I think we're all familiar. Do we all know Uber? Who uses, I heard Uber is not as popular here as it is in the States. Is that correct? Okay. I use Uber. I'm a sucker for Uber. I can get my hand-delivered personal assistant with a luxury vehicle wherever I want, whenever I want. I know where he is. I know his name. I know what vehicle he's driving. I know his phone number. I can email him. I know his approximate location, when he's going to be where I'm at, and I can tell him not to come anymore. I can cancel my drive at the swipe of a finger. But we've also done this for the driver, too. This is a trifecta. We've created a product that interacts with two separate entities connecting with each other. We've created a relationship between two people with the design. How awesome is that? The interface is simple, it's sharp, it's almost luxurious, perhaps like the driver. Simple, easy to use. The user, the driver, as well as the passenger, all in this relationship. Now I'm just going to quickly walk through a few different companies. We'll kind of take off on a different note on some places that I think perhaps focus on different subject matters more than one another. For example, we'll bring Google up. Now recently, of course, we're all aware that they're getting more interested in design. And I'm talking more about the appearance, the aesthetic. What does this thing look like? How does it feel? I think obviously the lack of design or the lack of these graphical elements is part of the design. Perhaps that's what they're going for. Apple obviously is very focused on the appearance. How does this feel in my hand? How does it look? It's attractive. Some companies might not care as much as others. They're just driven by sales. They want to communicate an intent. They want you to buy their product, or they will jam it down your throat as much as they can until you buy it, whether it's good or bad. Now, this is a love story. We're talking about designs and engineers, and particularly related to devices, mobile devices to be exact. So let's go ahead and break this down real quick so we can understand exactly what's involved. Well, we have the hardware, the design of the hardware, the engineering of the hardware, the logic implied or engaged in the internal system, the operating system, the web browser, and of course, this is the entire experience. This is the user experience as we highlight all of those things. So what does this mean? Well, I'm going to dissect what I feel at least captivates the full scope, the full spectrum of what product design is related to this subject. Now, I have user experience to start off here, and I'd like to admit that I feel like these are all separate jobs. These are all separate skill sets, trades. You can do each one of these individually at a company. These are important things that require a lot of attention. You can do some of them, you can interchange them, obviously, wherever your skills have led you, but we'll just rewind a little bit and we'll highlight user experience. There's the UI, there's the visual design, the interactive design, the front-end engineering, the back-end engineering, the logic, the systems operations. There's so many different characteristics involved in building these experiences. But what does the design look like? If we decide that design is process and planning, then we can break it down very simply and perhaps highlight an experience like this. Very simple, very low level, low fidelity, explaining the interactions, directing the flow of the user, the interface, the typography, the colors, the buttons, the highlights, the layout, the padding, the margins. Where do these things exist on the page? The components that collected together to create the interface. The motif, the visual design. How does this thing look? How does it feel? What are these colors? How brilliant or not brilliant will we make this? The interaction design. What happens when I press this button? Where does it go? Does it bounce? Does it hop? Does it slide? Does it skip? Does it drop? And how fast does it do that? How slow? These are all part of the design, the experience, the user experience as a collective. The logic, the language, as we open the hood to this beautiful design of ours, we can see the engineering behind it. The languages that create this experience for us, that drive these static images into a fluid experience. Now, there's a couple different ways I feel like when I'm highlighting collaboration internally for companies to use. This is a mechanism that I've used plenty of times before. It's very simple. It's slightly unorthodox. It's basically highlighting that you need to all get into a room and discuss what it is you're going to do, your tasks at the beginning of the week to start something, to accomplish a feature by the end of the week, 2 weeks, however long your sprints are, or however it else is you work. Figure it out. This is the whole think before you leap concept. What are we going to do and how are we going to do it? The plan of attack. The process in which we plan. We all fit ourselves together in a room and we make these decisions. The designer, the developer, we are all advocates for the customer. I've heard that the product owner is the customer voice. I think we should all be the customer's voice. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we all advocate for the end user? We're human beings. We have compassion. We want people to use this. We want it to be successful. Myself, particularly, I'm very good at Photoshop, and sometimes I'm maybe too quick to take the whiteboard into a high-fidelity mock-up. What does this look like? At the end of the day, the reality is this is just a bunch of boxes with text. How do we make it interesting? How do we capture your mind and stimulate it with colors, with impact? How does it sit on the screen, the glass? What does it look like on the shelf? This could be part of our testing process, perhaps, where we can now see very quickly what this might feel like in our hands. There is a lot involved in this, and I recommend highly that you decide to engage quite heavily in these things. Research, persona verification, who are you building this for? Interview these people that you're building this for. Get to know your user. Create a relationship with them. Create these low-level ideas that you can test, that you can try. What is research? Well, I personally feel like competition is a valuable advantage to some of us in the case that it keeps you driven. They keep your product evolving. They've made all of the mistakes on the barrier to entry that you can learn from. They've made bad decisions that they've corrected. Learn from your competition. This is the create friendships with your enemies, perhaps. Become part of their experience. Who will be using this? Target your demographic. I'm not a fan of highlighting individuals at the persona level. I think it would be ideal to highlight the larger group. What's your target audience as a whole? There's some very simple questions that you can ask. Now, a lot of these things that I'm covering right here are perhaps directed a little more particularly at a different kind of customer interview. Like, for example, if you have the QA manager at a company that's using an application, we want to understand what tools he or she uses. We want to understand how she works, what her pains are. What does she do? What is painful for her? What does she love to do? And what would she wish? We don't want to ask the user, what do they want? Because they will bury your feature backlog with all sorts of bells and whistles and magical circus paraphernalia that'll just create an unobtrusive, non-cohesive experience. We just really need to understand, what is it that you're trying to do? What is success for you? Pardon. This is important. If you start asking them very particular questions, you are priming the user to be cognitively aware of something well in advance. For example, do you like the blacks? Do you like the lights, the light colors? Do you like the reds? What about this button here? Do you like this here? I would avoid specific questions like that because they're now aware of it. They now know what they should be answering. Their mind is focused on that stuff. What were they doing? Where did they come from? How did they get there? Create a relationship with these people. Understand how they function, how they react, how they work, what it is they do. What are their responsibilities? What are they in charge of? I'm specifically holding back on the details of how to interact with these questions, but they're very high level. You can obviously dive deeper into the relationship as you gather information. I think that's really the intent here. We're gathering information. What kind of tools do they use? How do they divide their time? And then, of course, we have the capacity to iterate with them. Now that we've gotten an essential idea of what it is they do, we can create our interpretation of an experience for them. We validate it with them. This is kind of a cyclical experience. We test, we validate, we evolve, we move on. So, I am a fan of the Cosmos. Has anyone seen the Cosmos? There's the Neil deGrasse Tyson. What's recent? Both, yes. Sagan. Rest in peace, of course. So, I was watching an episode a few weeks ago, and Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about the scientific method of research. When we're gathering information, when we're testing ideas, how do we do this? And I feel that it was important what he brought up, and I'll quote, "Strictly adhere to a simple set of rules. You test ideas by experiment and observation. Build on those ideas and that pass those tests. Reject the ones that fail. Why would you continue to advance upon something that's not working? Follow the evidence wherever it leads, and of course, question everything. Why? How? Where? Evolve. Times are evolving, styles are evolving, our minds are evolving, humans are evolving. Everything is, we need to grow with them or else we will fail, I feel. Keep your product improving, of course. The climax of the story that I'm telling here is collaboration. Work together with yourselves, with the people in your offices, with your users, with other humans, and more importantly, with each other as designers and engineers. Now, I kind of went through that a little quickly, but we'll go ahead and have the dessert of this talk. I found this artistic work online, and I think it's appropriate to this topic when we're talking about what is collaboration and how can we collaborate to create great ideas, great experiences. So this is a small clip, a video, an artistic, I don't want to call it an advertisement, but these are the parties involved. There's computer graphics designers, there's narrators, there's poets, there's musicians, there's designers, engineers, directors, managers, the full scope of the entire product design spectrum or experience that we're designing here. I know while you watch this, think about the quality of the language, the tone of the narrator's voice, the sound of the music, the quality of the graphics, the quality of the flows, the dynamics of this climax that I think is pretty cool. So just enjoy.
Dreams. What are dreams? Moments etched in time, swept in strokes on twilight canvases, vast as the cosmos. Quiet lullabies echoing through the purple dawn. Dreams. The farthest reaches of imagination fulfilled. Endlessly evolving in leaps and bounds. Hidden beauty in unexpected places. Sculptures of perfect imperfections. These are dreams. Sublime journeys beyond the extraordinary. Sad shadows of requiems long ago. Forms and formlessness. Textures that radiate cascading visions and colorful sounds. Dreams that shimmer between wishes and stars. Mystery, majesty. Transcendent they soar through infinite possibilities.
So you either like it or you don't, you hate it or you love it. We've created a response from you, you've reacted to something, or maybe you don't care. Created a relationship, one way or the other. That's really the intent, the message that I try to bring. And pardon me if this is spelled miscorrectly here. Is that correct? No? Yes. Okay, Google. So the previous speaker said, thank you, Google Translate. I'll say the opposite. Thank you for being here with us today. With myself, I appreciate your company, and I wish you all the best.
That was amazing and inspiring, very much. I have a question for you.
Of course.
I've read a blog post on the design of the commercials, on design of the product advertisements. And in this blog post, it was said that Apple tends to create this experience when you have a hand and exact interactions without any fancy effects and so on. And it was on the opposite side when they put the brand, other brand, and when there's a magic, there's a effects, sounds, and so on. On which side you are?
I think it's a balance, of course. And this is what I guess can be coined like where you engineer an emotion. When there's a moment in the experience that you want to delight the user, that you want to create a response from them, then you can engage in such graphical or animation heavy interactions. Obviously you have to tone that down. You don't want your experience or whatever the product is to be a circus with colors and bells and whistles, and tone that stuff down. But the second you do introduce that on these blank canvases that you're describing, it screams much louder than it would if that's all that it was.
Okay, so we have a time for a lot of questions. So Oh, try this one.
Test. Okay. I have a question about Crashlytics.
Please.
This is a product for developers, and we as developers prefer simple things because there are less bugs there. Then the Crashlytics has a very strong, distinct design, right? Just like the Bugatti you showed us.
Correct.
My question is, was it hard to go with this design? I mean, did you have to hard fight to use this design and instead of some other simple, and were there any different designs maybe
Yes.
for the site?
Absolutely, great question. We were very focused on the art of the interface. Now, like you suggested, if we're trying to extract information, we don't want the graphical interpretation of the experience to get in the way of me just trying to gather information, because that's what I'm there to do. But again, it's like what I suggested earlier. You either love it or you hate it. You have the fanboys, the people who are attached to it because it's unique, it's different, and that's one of the reasons that it was done, because it separated itself from the other players in the game. However, we did appeal to those others in that community by simplifying things. Like, for example, you're just here to get the stack trace initially, the back trace. You can either parse the information in the interface that we provide, or you can digest the raw format. So we kind of fed both worlds.
Question? No questions? Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. So your talk was very inspiring, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.